So Running Water and Googadunga are looking at each other, and I'm swearing and cursing. And then they said, we've been waiting for thousands of years. Now, I'm not thinking of word you, and I was not caught up in any of this, wow, none of this was happening for me. I just didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm mostly lost in the trauma of dealing with Macquarie Bank and the residues of the Australian Tax Office and the battles. Anyone who's been through any of this stuff, you know what I'm talking about. Because you're talking about, the fear and the trauma of losing everything you got that provides you with security in the system. So you believe going through this stuff. So a lot, and the walking was to keep my head together as best I could. And then these experiences are happening as well. And, and I didn't have time because my head's thinking, I've got to deal with this, I've got to deal with that, to deal with this. And we've still got a family and kids, and we're in this little rental place, and all our other stuff was all up in turmoil. I'm looking at Googadunga and Running Water. They moved apart. It was like, and I'm walking, all this is happening while I'm walking with these physical effects. And it's like if you're in a movie watching, or ready to watch a movie and the screen lifts up. Now, this is not happening, but it's just giving you some ideas. Something happened. And before me, just revealed unnumbered lights of souls in wholeness. And I don't know what that means, whether it's quadrillion, zillion, billion, trillion, billion, billions, or whether it's hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands. But they're all there in wholeness, in this glorious white light with the gold and the yellow, and my body's in this elation and the joy and all the stuff that's been happening. And they say, we've been waiting for thousands of years. And then they burst into a song, which I can only relate to like black gospel music, but it wasn't black gospel music. It was a song of immense joy and elation, of happiness. And with it, the freedom and the peace and all that came with that, with this song. And the dog's dancing, Sammy's dancing, and my body's starting to dance with it. And I had a thought in my head come into my head that I must have created, thinking, I must be becoming normal now. And this went on. It could have gone for 10, 15 minutes. Now, I'm sure if anyone was, I say this a lot, if anyone was driving past, seeing any of these experiences that I was having, and they had a straitjacket in the back seat, they might have just pulled in, slammed the car, ran over, grabbed this man, and put him in a straitjacket and take him off to the mental asylum. And fair enough. That's how I was feeling. It was crazy stuff because I wasn't used to it. Dreaming for things, but actually experiencing it, are two different things. And anyway, it lasted for however long it lasted in this timeless thing, and then it faded away, and probably faded very quickly. And I'm pulling my head together, and right, I'm stopping this 2-hour walk back home. And I'm talking to Fiona, and I actually said to her, I think I'm becoming normal. I don't know if that meant Abby normal, but I think I really did feel something was happening. And that was in May 2006. So all these chain of events between January 2006 and May 2006 have become deeply profound, because within 48 hours of that last experience, Macquarie Bank had organised locksmiths to go down to the family home, to the beach house that we were using as holiday rentals to keep cash flow running in, to keep us going up here where we're living in this rental property. They changed the locks, and we had a local friend who went down with me some weeks earlier to do some tidy up work because we couldn't finish the property where this fraud was derived from. Because what had happened with Fiona, we got Fiona to fund some money from Macquarie Bank to renovate the original beach shack that was underneath the main house that was built on top of it back in the 70s, and to integrate into one bigger beach house to generate a cash flow, because my head was still in money, bring it up to about 100,000 a year. It was making 62,000 a year income, and I wanted to take it up to nearly 100,000 a year. And then during that renovation, we got so stuffed around in this, we had a 7-week period which we blocked off to get the renovation done. And then there was all these delays in the settlements, and it went right into halfway into the period, and we couldn't even pay all the tradespeople that we'd contracted because everything was already approved and put in place. And it was just waiting for the money to be put in the account. But it got delayed and delayed and delayed by all sorts of bullshit at that end. And it sabotaged the ability to pay for a lot of resources to get the 7-week window done to finish this renovation where I pulled this team of workers together to rebuild the shack. So we couldn't finish it. So we had to cosmetically finish the outside of it, leave it all in an unfinished state on the inside. So the presentation looks great. And then we just keep renting out holiday rentals on top, the main family home. And we were living here when all these experiences that I was sharing with you had been going on. And that's when we discovered the switch in the contracts, that the original documents and what were actually done were two completely different documents, two unrelated things. And from that, it led to the loss of the family home and the destruction of my cash flow from the businesses that I still had. And from that, it forced us close towards, not in destitution, but we're heading close to destitution, and from that, potentially poverty. And then this is all happening while these experiences, because we had a friend that I said who went down there to help with painting, and then he and his wife went down there with her daughters to take the beach house, because it was booked. The beach house was booked like 97% of the year. It was very, very popular. And we had changed holiday rental market down there. We took it from here to here in cash flow. And well, I won't go into all that stuff, but she rang me, said she couldn't get into the house. The keys wouldn't open the door. And we're going, what do you mean? You got the right keys. And so eventually we ended up having to get a locksmith down there from Nara. And when we rang, we found out that the locksmith knew about some other locks that were sent there through the banks and some people they contracted to go and change the locks on the house, to take the house. That's how we knew what was going on. And we considered this to be really serious. Then within a couple of weeks of that, or whatever, we actually not even a couple of weeks, it was much quicker. It was within the 2-week period. There's an Australian guy called John Wilson who's in his late 70s now. He's a dentist, and he's been fighting these people since the 80s. And another Australian guy called Joe Bryant who'd also been fighting them, and Joe was a multi-millionaire, still wealthy and very supportive. And he was a guy who built Trojan horses, large Trojan horses, and moved these huge Trojan horses onto rural properties where farmers are being threatened by foreclosure because the interest rates went through the roof, and it's destroying the security and safety of the farming families. And we actually lost over 500,000 farming families from the late 70s through to the 90s. And this was intentionally done, and it's brilliantly engineered how these people do it. And so the Trojan horses had men inside them, and he put them in, and then the men would come out, and they would then be part of a larger community force to stop the police and all that trying to come and take possession of these properties. So Joe was known for a lot of this sort of stuff. And also Joe put Trojan horses outside Parliament House down in Canberra and State Government Parliament House. So he's a serious, not only a wealthy guy, but a pretty serious activist. And he got him, and we got to know Joe. And Joe and John and this man and another guy, Paul Shermack, connected to also came down. And we changed the locks on the family home, and Joe agreed to stay there for 3 days, 3 days and nights in the house, and that I would come back up here to this house in the bunker. And John went home and Paul went home. And so we took possession of the property again. Now, out of all of this, it dragged on to 2007. But I knew that all those experiences with running water, Gugadunga, and the face of God and the voice of God, and all that stuff that had happened was all connected, because it brought this man into the law. And in bringing that man into law, with still all that trauma that was mesmerizing inside this man's head, fighting to keep the family home, and all that security, which I thought was really important, was all being played out, you know, in Fiona and us. But we had a strong will, and you know, and you'll see this because we've not given up. Not the fight, but we wanted to realize the bigger picture, which is these insights that we're sharing. So we went through all this. Now, when Joe left his home, when Joe left the beach house, Fiona's home, 3 days later, and came back to his home, that night or the following night, I can't remember now, I have to go look up our notes, but within less than 36 hours or 48 hours, 2 men in balaclavas came into his family home in Mount Druitt in Sydney, where he lives, and he's a wealthy guy. And it would have been something like 3, 4 in the morning. They came in with balaclavas, and they came into the bedroom. Now, Joe's in his mid-late 70s, and so's his wife. And they hog-tied them, put a hood over their heads, and gagged them. And then they, once they did all that, they put a bullet in Joe's hip. They shot him. And for a couple of hours, they tortured both of them. Probably all kinds of verbal abuse. I haven't actually got the full rundown from Joe, but it was from what I got over the phone when we first spoke, because he ran me from the hospital, because they left a few hours later, and they took with them a cheap basic grandfather clock and an old PC laying around. Make it look like it was robbery, but it wasn't. It was obviously it all happened pretty quick, because they knew that, I think Joe's son might have been coming home pretty early or something like that. Something was happening. So it was set up, and we knew this was connected to what we were doing with the standing up to the banks. We had already launched the Lawful website in December 2006. At that point, I think. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. These things all were going on. And Joe rings me from the hospital bed, and and apparently word got out, and the media's all there, all the major television stations with all the current affairs and news stations and radio, because Joe's well known for these actions he's done in the past. And to me, when Joe rang me from the hospital with the media there, and it was going to go live to air, all of this got pulled in the last few minutes. All this, everything got pulled. Even when I spoke to the detectives and all the police involved, and I'm telling them about what Joe did and what we were doing and what was happening, even all those police were pulled off the case. It was all stopped, completely stopped. Now we're talking about Bill Moss behind Macquarie Bank now. We're talking about all kinds of people involved inside Macquarie Bank, and people involved in the law, and this whole conspiracy is because it's organized crime. And we know that these people control media, and they control all these things. So there's a lot of power play going on here to stop this. And it was an eye-opener for Fee and I, because it was the first time I realized, shit, this is serious stuff. You know, this is really, because we're actually taking them on, and the website broke the mainstream traffic. And they probably didn't have all their sophisticated software to neutralize the effects of a website using Google and what it was doing back then, you know, because it took a while for them to develop these sophisticated things. So much of what was doing was getting out into mainstream and word of mouth through the email networks that we were emailing through, and some word of mouth and all that. And so there was a lot of traffic. I mean, a lot of traffic going through the Lawful website. And it broke a lot of things into mainstream that needed to be brought into mainstream, things that were known by some, even by brilliant researchers, that needed to air to a greater audience. And the website was a medium for the chemtrails, the HARP, it was used for aspartame and MSG and the fluoride and the chlorine in the water, and then all the different corruptions of history. But more importantly, it brought an interesting South African man into our lives who was in his 70s, and who had been spending 40 years as a layman researching old biographies written by archbishops and bishops in England, books from the 1700s and 1800s. And in the back of these books were the codes of the letters, explain what the letters meant. And he used to practice as a 30-something degree Freemason in South Africa. But when he moved to Australia, he didn't continue on the practice. And he contacted us because we were screaming out for help and sharing with us these insights that he had about the alphabet language and its history. And that's how we got to realize that there was so much more going on here. And so we filed documents in the courts that had the judges leave the courtroom, but still no remedy. We didn't get a remedy to the family home, and we still never got any of that back. And all that, I mean, today's values would be like $2.5 million that Fiona and we were lost in terms of that theft and that fraud. And we've been living in a rental property, but bigger than that was that during this time when we discovered the codes of the English language, and we started realizing there's a much bigger scam going on, which is what led to the insights. This man chose to get out of the system completely and drop the name and drop everything, completely pulled out. So this man no longer used drivers in 2006, no longer used the driver's license, car rego, tax file numbers, bank accounts, credit cards, you name it, no contract. There's no name of this person no longer used in the system. And so that has been like that ever since till now. And I'm never going to go back. I knew that going back to what I said about the voice of God and when that presence revealed itself, and then the Gugadung and the running water in these events, the reason I'm sharing these things is because when I was 14 years old, and I was told you earlier that I had been sexually abused, I discovered doing this work that the vessel was sexually abused, and that there was a disconnection, like a complete disconnection from the consciousness of the man, what the man's sensing, and the vessel. Because I don't have many memories of my early life as a really young kid. The only memories I have is the violence of my mother and father, and it was violence mostly from my father, and from my mother too. And I found out from relatives that mum used to tie me up on a clothesline because I used to run away. And this is little kid. And no wonder I knew, because I was being sexually abused, anal penetration, all that by these weirdos. I used to run away from home. I used to get out of the 2-story terrace house. Mum used to keep the door shut. I still used to get out. And I'd walk out onto the main street on this thing called Edgecliff Road, and I'd catch a bus at the bus stop, and I'd end up in the city in a place called Darlinghurst, and I'd be wandering around wherever I was until people realized I was missing, and then until mum found out that I was missing. And eventually police would discover this little kid. And if I didn't get on a bus and run off, and we're talking 1.5, 2 years old here, kid, up until probably 3 or 4, this used to drive my mother bananas. I kept running away. Obviously because of the abuse, and no one was listening, and I must have been traumatic and screaming and had mega tantrums with my mother, and must have driven my mother bananas, and but she's not knowing what's happening, and she's probably traumatized by stuff. And I had to discover it really was an arranged marriage that my mother had, and it's a long story to that, and I won't go into all that, but a lot of weird things happened between mum and dad, and probably others. That bit of playing up may have happened, I'm not sure. But anyway, the point is, I also used to run away and then come back with all these dogs. I used to bring back heaps and heaps of dogs. This 2-year-old kid, 2.5, 3-year-old kid would just walk up and come back with something like 8, 10, 12, 14 dogs, whatever. And then I told you about mum was tying me up. So the point is that there's a lot of trauma in this vessel from all that horror that no child should go through. It doesn't matter. I mean, the kids in Palestine, all the bombing, that's far worse than anything I've experienced. You know, the horrors of seeing broken, blown limbs and mothers and fathers dead. And I mean, the kids brought up in Cambodia where they're having to walk out and go down these long pathways or laneways to get water, and seeing all these posts put up with all the dead of their villages and families put up there, beheaded, disarmed, disfigured, and they're walking past all. I mean, that is the worst. I haven't experienced that, but sexual abuse is still pretty bad. You know, it's really bad stuff, especially when you're young and you don't know. You know, and I must have fought, because I am a fighter. I must have fought against this, and I have suspicions as to why they do these rituals, why this was happening, and why I've had such a strong fight inside me to unravel this shit. So anyway, coming back to 2005, 2006. And meeting that South African man and opening my eyes to the letters and words, and having had David Icke in my life. Anyone who knows who David Icke is, we met David Icke. We were in awe of David back in 96, 97. I can't remember what it was, 97, 96, 97. And he was on one of his early, maybe his first tour, when his book, The Truth Shall Set You Free, had come out back then. And I went up to, we drove up to the Central Coast of Gospel, where he was doing a talk in a gospel club that was done by some people there. And I went and met David and told him who we were. And he arranged to come and stay with us in our family home while he was doing what he was doing in Sydney for that week. And then he did. And he put on a talk in our home as well. And I got friends to come in and see that. But there's also these two strange women, one particular one, but another one would just, every now and then they would turn up and stay there for a night. And I remember the weird vibes. But the biggest weird vibe I got was every day that I was with David, I used to have these periods of intense nauseas, but worse than nauseas, like my body wanted to get sick and vomit. And it felt like really sick. And this would go on for like 10, 15 minutes, being around David. And then it would go away. And I used to keep thinking there's something wrong with me. But that was in 1996, 97. And in 2005, 2006, when we met the South African man, he revealed to us the methods of doing a script analysis on books, which reveals the codes of a double language, like an Orwellian double talk, triple speak, that only those initiated into this can do. It can take like 20 years to master these crafts. You've got to know this because you've got to master mathematics and geometry, and you've got to comprehend it all from a scale. So this is people higher up who are well above Rotary Club and Lions Club and all that kind of Freemasonry with all its charitable show pony look. We're not talking about these people, because everyone's got a good heart. Remember, everyone has a good heart. All believe they're doing the right thing. So, and I'm thinking with Fiona, no, it can't be David. No, David, no, he's a good guy. He's one of us. He's, da-da-da, and all this stuff was going on. But then the penny dropped. We will lead every revolution against us. If I can get you to dream what I want you to dream, I mean, if I can get you to think what I want you to think and get you to give your energy to those thoughts, I can get you to create that. And I got to see what David was doing. We will lead every revolution against us. We'll get to create your dreams for our world, for us to maintain our power and control over you. Getting back to this stuff about the robots and the software, all that stuff I talked about in this broadcast and in other videos and articles which we've discussed these things. And that's when I realized I just got it, that when I was getting sick around David, it was like, if you ever watched Lost in Space, the original series of Lost in Space with Will Smith, the boy with the robot, and the robot turns around and goes, "Warning, Will Robinson, warning, danger, danger, danger." It was the ancestors telling me, watch out, things aren't what you think they are. And it was a physical thing, I was experiencing it physically, I wrote to David. I actually rang him because we knew where he lived and we had his number. And I asked him, how did you learn this shit? How come you know the skills of this? You can do Orwellian doublespeak in a book like this and talk another language, because the script analysis revealed it clearly. And he just fobbed me off. Put it off to nonsense and all the other stuff, which is what all of these people do. And the whole system is based on this ignorance, which is this mediocrity. They cannot allow you for them to accept that this is going on. So they do not allow any kind of validation or precedence, because that would open up like a hole in their wall and crack their wall and bring it all down, and everything will just be a farce. So they're very good at ignoring you. And this is why I said in the image labels thread, when that link that I'll give you, you look at the John Matheson thing that went on for like 2 months, coming and going here and there every week or so. You'll see how this plays out, and why I started cursing him and saying he's a low-life scum, because it's exactly what he does. And I wanted to capture this. I intentionally did this so that readers can sit there and watch how this shit plays out. Because this is what judges do in the courtrooms, how they ignore you. And the methods behind us, the training these people are given to do this, to keep the scam going, to keep them in power and to run it. Because, you know, if it got out, and fair enough, if it got out too quick, we're talking about all hell breaking loose everywhere because there's no order anymore in their world. And then we're talking about civil war and all kinds of shit going down. And now we're talking like the French Revolution and the galleys and, you know, lining people up and shooting people because of what they do. And this is common because when you realize how evil these definitions are, you realize the occultists they're not the Jews in the books and all the Jews that were expelled out of all these places, because the letter J didn't even exist till 1520, alias Francis Bacon with William Shakespeare, when the word Jew first appeared in his writings. But you'll find that the Jew never is a construct that was made up. And the whole story goes back to the Ashkenazim bloodlines out of those old Soviet blocs. And you'll see these histories, how it shows in their books, because these are the only ones that could write everything. The only ones who can read and write were these tiny few people, because the only ones who could read and write any history up to 1780 AD, in fact, up to 1930 AD. Still, most of man was illiterate. I mean, more of man were learning to do English and writing between 1780 and 1930, but the major bulk of this psychic attack, this lying, was already done and released in books, in thousands of books. Bullshit. Twist. You only have to put one line to twist it to corrupt it all. Because if you accept the truth and you accept the lie that comes with truth and you can't detect it, the lie will do all the damage. It's like dropping a tiny bit of poison into a lolly and telling the child that it's good for you. If the child can't detect it and eats that lolly, the child's also eating the poison, right? And if you have another one, you can't notice the gradualism of that poison will spread until it's too late. It's taken you over and killed you. Now, it's the same with the occult stuff. This is what happens to occultists, the gradualism that seduces them into this darkness of this lying, gets to the point where they think they're doing the right thing. The good heart thinks that everything they're seeing through their definitions is true. And this is the way to be, even in spite of whatever trauma they're under and worried about their brotherhoods and sisterhoods turning against them because it's rolling stone out of control, you know. Because when you get above the show pony levels of writing and all that, and you get into these high levels with David Icke and whoever else is writing his books, doing this sort of shit, you're on an oath of death. And if you're caught doing anything like that, you're finished. And if you don't follow the regimental structures of these Freemasonic orders, and you can bring Knights Templars and Knights of Malta and the Bilderbergs, all those societies, and the Council of Foreign Relations and the British Institute of International Affairs and the Australian Institute of International Affairs, and it goes on and on. All of these are all connected in high levels into this organized web of control by occultists, by Freemasons. But as I stressed the point, this is not an attack on them, because this was done to them. This horror, that the brush they used to paint had already been used on them, and they become this because they don't see reality before them. They only see the fantasy of the definitions that's formed their fantasy dream, or they've risen up out of the dead. This includes everyone caught up with Aleister Crowley's work, all those caught up in every facet of Aleister Crowley's work, with Thelema, the Ordo Templi Orientis. Everyone are trapped by this. They're lost in this definitions forming the fantasies of perceived realities. So we've got to go to the bigger picture and get past even all of this to see the wholeness of this, so we can see what the remedy is. So in dealing with David Icke and seeing all that and experiencing and realizing that the alphabets and the letters were definitions and how it's used to deceive us, and you can see it all through our work, and I already provide you links that you guys can look at, you can see that there's another bigger thing going down here. And I knew that the voice of God and the face of God and the Gugadung and running water, and then that wholeness of souls was all connected to this, from a dream of this boy that I was telling you about when I was 14. And I was a miserable kid. I was always, I had suicidal tendencies, never did it, never even tried to. These thoughts were in my head. I was unhappy in the vessel, unhappy about my life. I was looking over the fence of greener pastures, never ever happy. Built up a fake ego to survive out of, because all I had left as a kid growing up. I don't make this an excuses for anything. I've never malevolently planned to harm anyone. I've just been lost in my chaos and trauma and doing stupid things and harming people along the way, which is where nearly all of us are doing this sort of stuff. So I was waking up, and that 14-year-old kid back then, I must stress this point, I had come home from school and already carrying enormous weight of suffering inside me, and with all that confusion, and getting, when you start hitting 13, 14, you want to break away. You know, I was already wanting to move out, and I already basically was hating my family. I hated anything to do with Greek. I didn't want anything to be involved with Greek. Really hated really wrote off everyone in all my families. Wrote them all off. They might saw me as a dark sheep, but I had written them all off. And I'd come home, come down the steps of this house Mum lives in, and I could see these feet in the air hanging out of the laundry, outside laundry. And I ran down, and it was my father holding my mother up in the air, trying to force her head down inside the toilet. They were having a huge battle. And this 14-year-old kid, my father's a bigger guy than me, and obviously I'm only 14, and I completely lost it. I don't know what happened. I can't remember how Mum came down, but I grabbed my father, physically picked him up and threw him. And he would have gone up 2 feet, 3 feet from there. I threw him up into whatever the door was, or the part of the door on the wall. And I went to grab the chair, and I was going to fucking kill him. I was going to kill this man. I hated him, and I wanted to kill him for all the harm that was going on. And my mother screamed out and just said, "No!" And I just stopped like that. Oh, and dropped the chair. And it cut really, really deep in me, this. And some years later, I found out that my sister had been abused. And my sister doesn't know anything. My sister watches this. This is the first time she'll ever hear about this. I confronted her partner and told him that if I ever find out that you touch her again, you better make sure you kill me now, Because if you don't kill me now, and I find out you touch her again, I'm going to track you down and kill you. I will kill you. And you won't even know where I'm coming and how I'll come, but I'll get you. And not long after that, they got, well, I don't know what happened, but they got separated. I'm not saying it was because of this, but I meant it. And he's a bigger guy, man. He could have just smashed me. But I bloody meant it. I was serious. And this also happened, there's something in me clicked after this thing with my father. I was 16, 17. I went to a nightclub, dancing with a girl. I used to get girls. I was all right. Anyway, I'm dancing with someone I just met there on the dance floor. It's called the Green Elephant in Kensington, part of an old cinema theatre or live stage theatre. And so out of nowhere, I got smashed by a fist that knocked me down like a potato sack from behind me or to the side of me. I didn't even know anything was coming. And I saw stars. And then slowly pulled myself through. And I was absolutely snapped. I don't know who it was, but I wanted to know who it was. I wanted to track this down. And I finally tracked it down. And he was a professional football player. I waited for him with a piece of steel on the back lane. And when I finished with this guy, I had broken many parts of his body. And I knew this is the last time I could ever do it, because what I was experiencing doing it to a big guy, this is a big football, rugby league player, I must have ended his career. I took the piece away from me, and I went home and got rid of this, and never heard anything more from any of this. Nothing. I was just so fucking angry because I was fighting back, like I must have been that kid with all that sexual abuse, fighting back. How dare these people do this? But I knew from that experience I am never to do this again to anybody, because I knew I could kill somebody. I can go past that line and kill someone. So there's a 16, 17-year-old kid, wherever he was, could have even been close. I can't remember now. It was so far back. I just knew I'm never to go there. And I think it was because my mother called out with that voice, no, with the chair. Something deep in me redirected my intentions to go elsewhere in dealing with this stuff and not into harming people like that. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced something like this, but it's fucking awful. I probably felt even worse than the guy that I did it to, even though he really hurt me bad. I was really hurt. It just, maybe all those years of trauma just snapped. So what I'm trying to say is I realized I wasn't driven by fear. I had no fear in me. I was still sensitive. And I was always, didn't want to ever go down the road, because I'm always, this thing explodes. Wow, I don't know, what carnage I could cause. And anyone who does this can happen to us, But that became a gift all these years later, because again, I found myself, when I came home from school and saw my mother and all that happened, within days of that, or some period of time around that, I was at my mother's backyard crying, talking to whatever was God or whatever it was. I even hated God, I hated religion, but I was just talking to something. So I just want to live for the truth. I just want to live for the truth. And I really meant it. I want this life to live for the truth and go with the truth. That was the intention. It may not have been the words, but that was the intention. And I think that ever since then, my life has been shaped by this dream that I've held. And I think I've reconnected that with another dream from another life that goes right back. And within weeks of that experience with that dreaming and crying in the garden, I was at a dentist, and I was sitting there looking at a reception there. There's a book there, and I'm hearing the voice, steal me, take it, steal it, steal me, take me. So I took the book and took it home. And it was called The Origin and Destiny of Man by Egregore. Now that wasn't so important. What was that at the back of the book, or wherever it was, there was a stamp that said the ADYAR bookshop, which is part of the Theosophical Society in Castlereagh Street in Sydney. And I just not only read this book, I went and started buying hundreds of books, because I was making money as a young 15-year-old kid. And I was going through what today are the norms. I'm reading all this stuff back then in 1972, 73, right up to about 76, 75. And that led me to Findhorn, and from Findhorn, it led me to all kinds, Eckankar, and I just saw a lot, but I just kept moving along. I went to workshops and talks, and I met all kinds of most interesting people, heavily exposed to the New Age, all that back then. By the time I'd hit what we call in the Fitch Tom 21, all gone past me. And I went down to Victoria, and that's how I met up with Bill Mollison and people, and doing permaculture in the late 70s. And well, not so much permaculture. It was the residues were starting to impact my thinking and making changes. And the main guy who had a lot of money down there was starting to implement it. And so that's how it was affecting me. And so I wouldn't call myself a permaculturalist. I just knew enough to do the basics. But gee, since we lived here, and then we met Aidan Bender when Aidan came into our lives. Aidan introduced us more about the carbon side of stuff, and that really made those missing pieces of that truth we're looking for become more in sync in that wholeness. So I'd gone through a lot of experiences, even all the Macquarie Bank stuff and all the David Icke stuff I'm talking about, everything, because it gave me an insight into the everyday life out there. Just got every facet. I got to experience it. I got to see it. And that's no, like it was just I dreamt for that. I want to know what the truth was. I just didn't know how it was going to pan out, but it panned out like that. So that gives a bit of a window of all of that. So now we're getting back to this magnificence defined into mediocrity and calling it magnificence. Because I got to realize in doing the Love for Life work, and there is another experience I should share here, which has happened in 2012. I think it might have been in June 2012. I went to sleep for 2 weeks. The whole body went to sleep. Fiona was here. Hannah was here. Hannah's original boyfriend, Andy, was here. My friend Bruno, our friend Bruno, came to visit while I was asleep. And there was Giorgio Rapetti, who's the first guy we ever did live recordings, which is now up on YouTube, reposted. He came as, he was already then a Tibetan monk, and he was doing acupuncture. Fiona called him in now. This man slept for 2 weeks, gone. I don't remember anything. If there's anything, it's just I remember Giorgio and Bruno on the side of the bed looking down at me, probably trying to do acupuncture. So Fiona tells me when I finally woke up, or whatever, that they had to, whoever was there doing this, maybe Hannah and Fee, picking up the body, taking it to the bathroom, sitting the body up, trying to get some liquid into the body, but whatever. But this body was gone for 2 weeks, slept for 2 weeks. It was a deep sleep. And when I came out of this, I had to relearn to walk because I had no balance. And it took me some weeks to walk because every time I tried to walk, I was like this. I couldn't even stand. And when I started getting outside the house and just slowly walking like a man who's had a stroke and is 80 years old, I'm not holding anything. I'm just having to walk really slowly. I noticed that my senses were just so heightened. And but when it really hit me was when I managed to finally walk down outside where we're living, down to the ponds, and getting down to where I could look across to the main Kangaloo Road, and the distance was maybe more than a kilometre away. I could read the fine print on any vehicle that had writing on that truck in small print. I could zoom in and read it. But more than that, people walking past in that distance, I could zoom in and listen to their conversation. But even more than that, I started noticing that I had like Superman X-ray vision. I could look inside people's bodies and see everything. And I spun out and I said, no, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. It's too much responsibility. I just felt it was overwhelming. And I was telling Fiona, I don't want any of this, because if word got out that this man could do these things, not thinking then that everyone should be able to do it, we'd have a line of people from the front door all the way to 5 kilometers away to the Barrel Station wanting to see this man because they want something. And I didn't want that. And these heightened senses, with the voice of God and all that other experiences of talking about Google and running water, have had a deeply profound experience, as well as the insights into the occults and the alphabets and all this shit. So it was giving me the truth, because I really want the bigger picture from that 14-year-old kid who was dreaming for. I want to know what the truth is. I want to know what the good meaning. To go to the truth, it means you've got to walk towards it. But if you don't know what it is and you're confused, you're going to keep going towards lies, thinking that they're the truth, and be lost. So that had, I can't even put into words the experience that had on this man. But because the man already left the system in 2006 and Lawful Life started and we were already doing it, we were working on unraveling how the system really works. And it's only been really since David Botram, the Ordo Templi Orientis, came into our lives in, I think it was February, March 2014, thanks to Luke's Army and Michael Borosovich, who posted intentionally a large defamatory post inside the Lawful Life website that was always unmoderated until then, that brought David Bottrell into Fiona's life to go after Fiona for defamation, even though Fiona never posted it, and even though she took it down within a few weeks, because David Bottrell, within a couple of days of that post put in the Lawful Life website, rang us, or within a week or whatever it was a short period of time that David found out this post is in the Lawful Life website, demanding to be taken down and be compensated, firstly with a phone call that this man answered and told him to fuck off. And then it began the processes through the ACT tribunal and chasing Fiona for $10,000 damage and trying to come after this man for $10,000 damages too, right? But they couldn't get at this man because there was nothing to get at. Didn't exist in their world, but they continued to go after Fiona because she owned the website. But that period of 2014 onwards, it led us into this stuff about definitions and about ritual sacrifice and how all this stuff works. And it's only been in the last 6 months that we've realized the big picture really clearly. I'm confident in saying I 100% can tell you the big picture of how the system really works now and what's become of everyone in it and the remedy to it, how to fix it and get out of this mess, right? Because it's got to be done through undefined ways. It cannot be done through following scripts, because that's only just repeating definitions and people being trapped. Again, read the image labels thread. It's a long thread. You'll see posts in there that get into this, and we would broach on these sort of subjects. So anyway, what I got to see was that we are gifted with magnificence. And the responsibility of that, which is naturally there, is to maintain and expand that magnificence. So we pass it on to our children, who then pass it on to our grandchildren, because our great-great-great-great-great-grandparents passed it on to us. They passed it all down from the original man of God that came as man. But we're not doing that. We're doing the opposite. We're passing on mediocrity under the guise of magnificence, under the progress of civilization, and under the guise of all these brilliant intellectuals, all these great educators and philosophers and thinkers and every brain tank that's come out of university and all those laymen that are risen into it. All of it collectively has brought us all to almost extinction, annihilation. Hasn't freed us. It's made it far worse. Here we are, Fiona and this man, doing Love for Life since 2005, late 2005, in a rental home, been taken close to destitution and poverty, living with this man out of the system, who used to bring in an average of $4,000 a week income that was spent on all the things we were doing in our lives, but to nothing, pulled out. To Fiona having to default to Centrelink parenting payments with incredibly low income. And then it came from gifts, the bits and pieces of gifts we got from the Lawful website that kept us alive. And then it became obvious around 2010, 11, that we had to make a garden. But the garden wasn't just creating to give food, because I needed to get the garden to feed us, to compensate for this struggle we had with not enough money, because the system demands us, we have to have money to get food and all the things we need, which should be freely available to every man on land, because every man is gifted, just as God came as man on the land with that paradise that God created as the original man. We're all gifted that as well, which means undefined man on land already has access to food forests and food and water and shelter And that space gives that man the room to dream beautiful, magnificent dreams, and then contribute to this magnificence, add to it and expand it. Because the Creator never dreamt for us to be less than the Creator. Unconditional means it's undefined. Unconditional love means that, you know, a mother who truly loves their children would dream for their kids to be greater than the mother. We never dreamed to be less than that. I mean, what kind of God is that? I want my kids to be handicapped and disabled. You'll always be scum. You must be mediocrity. This is educated to us. This is not naturally done. So children brought up by the sacredness of magnificence are already learning the full responsibility to protect it, not to desecrate it. And so I got to see this very clearly through my senses, you know, through the senses of this, what I was perceiving, to create a garden. But it was about holding a dream where this man's will is not broken. To show the occultists, you have not broken this man's will. That in spite of having no money and under our circumstances, I'm going to create a magnificent garden that's going to feed us and feed 10 times more people. In spite of how effed they want it to be. To inspire others that we can all do this. It doesn't matter what they've done. It doesn't matter whatever's going on out there. We can turn this around because we have this ability to co-create magnificence and pass that magnificence on to others. Right? So that dream, this magnificent dream, which is not just this dream of this garden around this place, it's the whole of creation itself. Because I was able to hold and still able to hold the original dream of the Creator and what dreamt for all of us. And every child is supposed to have that already in the womb if we don't interfere. And as I explained to you in other videos and articles earlier, when we define reality to a child by saying, oh, that's a daffodil and that's yellow and that's this and that and that, we're actually saying to our children, you are no longer magnificent. You can no longer work things out in your unique original way. You must have doubt and uncertainty with everything you are experiencing of reality through your senses, because you must ignore what you're sensing and default to the definitions that defines your perception of reality and live out of that and for that. Right? So it's thought control, robotic control. And this doubt and uncertainty is the tongue of English we speak. And it's all the constructs and concepts that forms our actions in our everyday lives of waking up to the clock and all the things we do in the system. In spite of everyone's good heart who dreams for peace and freedom, because everyone's got a magnificent heart. It's in all of us. But we've been so hijacked from the vessel, we don't know how to reclaim the vessel and be the captain of the ship, have our soul be the magnificence that lives magnificent, passes on magnificence to everyone else, because we don't own it. We don't have land title deeds. We don't have contracts. We don't have private corporations exist. We don't have law because we already are it. We already are. It's like when you're breathing air, you don't sit there freaking out for your next breath of air. You don't have to walk, 10 feet to go and grab your next breath, or you have to dive somewhere 30 feet to get your next breath. It's already here. You got it. So why are you doubting it? The sun's still shining and everything of magnificence is still present to us. We're the ones who are peeling away from and fucking everything along the way. All the way we're trying to survive this dream world of fantasy, which is killing everyone. And this is all the brilliant intellectuals. All the occultists are coming to this. They're all party to this. It's a cohabitating effort of annihilation. So there will be a generation produced that will have nothing to remember what a man is, because there will be nothing. Because that's all they had. Guess what a fantasy is nothing. Imagining a definition is fantasy. There's nothing there. And if you raise that up from the dead, but you create the material physical form of that definition, you have to destroy reality to form the physical material form and then worship it as a false idol temple. That's what we call suburbs and cities and motor transport and all the industries that all interconnect with everyone inside it. Everyone thinks they're all doing the right thing. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a barrister. I want to be a judge. I want to do the right thing. I want to help. I want to go to charities, and we're going to try and solve problems with cancer and all the other terrible diseases that are coming around everywhere today. I want to do this. I want to be Sister Teresa. I want to help raise the poor. I want to help this and that. Look, everyone's got a good heart, but we're so compromised. Some of us completely forget it, but it's there. But we're not supposed to live like this. And this is our situation. Here we are living in a rental property. We got a letter and a phone call from the lease rental property saying that Fiona's received a termination notice to move from here in 3 months, 6th of November, which is okay. We're dreaming for a bigger dream of land. But Fiona writes, we had to write back to Fiona, and Fiona says, well, okay, 5 years ago, we tried to move already, not because of them. We wanted to move to more land. But no matter where Fiona was looking and applying for rental, for more land, she kept getting knocked back because she's a low income earner. Even though she's got no bad credit rating, nothing, she's discriminated against. So this magnificence has been defined into mediocrity. A woman with a magnificent heart will never harm anyone, has been subjected to the discrimination, right? Now everybody in the system is going through this shit in so many different ways. It's unbelievable how we do it, how we discriminate the good heart. Like in the Tom Cruise movie Minority Report, with his thought control of the future. Oh, we must arrest that man. That man may steal something from that shelf in the supermarket. We must arrest him. That man might do harm. I'm going to reject this woman because this woman may not be able to service her responsibilities because they can't sense the living. They don't know who the living is before them. All they have is the definitions that defines the robotic job they live as robots, drones. They don't know how to sense reality. All they got is definitions that blind the fuck out of them. So here we are as a family who stuck this out up to now, living this undefined dream, sharing these insights for free, never charged anyone for anything, never collected, never all the food that we're given away. We never charged anyone for it. We don't want anyone because we dream to inspire others to start doing this. So that we all are each other, the wind on each other's wings, and we raise each other up out of mediocrity back to true magnificence. So we can produce children who are brought up by nature again with no one defining reality to them. See, so the thing is that Fiona and this man are not the responsible parties to the termination notice, because the owners of these two properties, there's one next door that's up for rent right now, which would have been great if someone came and took that property and we could expand it further, but that's okay. That doesn't have to happen. There's another one across the road that's up for rent right now in these rental situations. Fiona has told them, I can't move in this letter. I don't have the money to move. Where am I going to move to when I keep getting knocked back? I mean, I had everything I needed when I moved here, fighting Macquarie Bank, till I ended up with nothing. That the people behind Macquarie Bank and the law and all that protected were the ones responsible to create this chaos that's left me in this position where I am now. And that includes this man pulling out of the system, know what was really going on and getting the bigger picture. Now we told him, we have nothing against you. We hold no, we're not victims. We don't have any victim mentalities. We're not saying to anyone, we're going to blame you for any of this. But look at these predicaments. How can we move when we don't have the money to move and we don't have the whereway to open up doors inside the system where Fiona can move and move this whole garden, because we're going to have to dismantle the garden. We're going to need manpower to dismantle it all, which is what we're dreaming for those of you who want to be involved with this, to show that we are greater than all this mediocrity, that we together can raise each other up through magnificence and create magnificent life where we are not alone and easy pickings anymore in a mad world where everyone is individuals being attacked by people who've got a good heart thinking their job is doing the right thing as a police officer and a bailiff and an investigator and a government agent and a federal officer and a court official or someone in the bar, because they're all doing harm. That's all they can offer. They only offer mediocrity. If you are raised in the system, all you have on offer is mediocrity. You can never offer anything that's magnificent because it's compromised, deeply compromised. I've got to go to work and I've got to work, got to make my money. I've got to go and arrest these people who've never committed a crime, who never injured anyone, who never broken the peace, never stole anything. But they must be dealt with because they're not able to pay. This is what happens to a lot of people. People are getting fined for speeding fines. I've never hurt anyone, never injured anyone, but they're getting fined. And everyone's scared, frightened, broken down badly. But there's nothing to be scared of because it doesn't exist. It's a fucking fantasy. All you've got is a man who'll do you harm. So when you confront these people, you say, are you here to uphold magnificence, to do no harm? Or are you here to support mediocrity and allow harm to run rampant? And you'd be blind by ignoring it all, but allow it to happen. Which way do you go? These people run. Court officials, they run. They can't face this stuff because they're compromised. So it needs us to do it. So here we are in a situation. Is there anyone out there? I'm not going to go standing on soapboxes and push all this out the middle barrel or anywhere else and say, the world's coming to an end, the world is coming to an end, and start preaching. I'm not a preacher. I'm not someone to be followed. I don't want anyone to follow this man. I hate all this shit. If I was much younger, I would have loved it because I had a huge ego. But that's what's made me so clear about it, because I went through it all from so young to survive the brutality of my childhood. Because I needed the ego to give me some kind of comfort, like a snuggie to hold on to, because that's all I had left, because everything else has been taken from me. And even that was just a fantasy. It's amazing how many of us can have imaginary slights where we default because we're sensitive, so sensitive, and we'll form these fake personas, which is all this pixelation coming out of definitions to form this illusion of a self, a person under a name. And we hear the voice so much, we become so attached to the voice that we formed a demon of our own imagining. And the voice talks, oh, this doesn't feel right. And ignore the living. I've experienced this with people very recently. They think, oh, it doesn't feel right. They're lost in the mediocrity because they're still lost in fantasy. And I can reveal to them exactly the fantasy in the makeup of what they're saying. You can show it. And you can show their true intention has been confused. That all they can do is continue being Godzilla stamping over reality and heart and other people. But they don't want to see that until I have to explain this. And you'll see this in the image labels thread and some of the other videos, how this shit works out, how it plays out. So every man in the system is compromised. So here we are as a family, compromised, supported by everyone else out there who supports the system to keep us compromised. Because you need a world of people out there supporting the system to keep it the way it is, so things are the way they are, for all the drones to keep doing what they do, and that for us to keep dealing with pieces of paper that are going to tell us what our future is going to be and what the outcomes of our lives are going to be. Because it'll be determined by the pixelations of land title deeds. From a land title office doesn't exist, with land titles that don't exist, because they're all fantasy, to all those people performing the roles of these pieces of paper who don't exist either, because they're all lost in fantasy. They're just system drones, robots, pushing pieces of paper around, or digital pixelations around across computer monitors and hard drives. The point is, You can sit there and listen to all the great truth that you ever come across, including this man's work. But it's still not going to rescue you from this. You can have all the greatest heart you want, but it's still not going to rescue you from this. Because you've got to remember, every generation since man started to fall into this madness all had good hearts, including the original ancestors who had good hearts and fell. They had it too. The good heart has never left us, because that's the essence, the liberty, the heritage of God in all of us, the original man, still gifted to us with what remains of what we're doing to this paradise. And they all dream. Every generation has men and women dreaming for peace and freedom and truth and joy in their way. Most people don't want to do harm, but most people are so inculcated, they don't know what's going on. They're so lost in this confusion that their dreams are small in spite of their magnificent heart. So running around living lives of small dreams with a big heart makes it incredibly painful and awful for most of us. Powerless and weakness and all the destructive emotions of all of this, and loneliness and emptiness and despair, and then the other side, the greed and the lust. I've got to hold on for my security. I need to protect my future. So fuck you and fuck you and fuck you. And, you know, listen, everyone in the system is doing this. Everybody in the system is doing this, supporting it. So I'm saying, how many of you out there want to stop this and hold a magnificent dream where we sacrifice everything of what we got of the system? Use the system. Let's buy a large piece of land with all the fictional world we put together, and we can help and all help each other to heal all this emotional shit so no one's dominating anyone. Everyone gets to have a space of love where they can have their dreams, but we do it out in the open as a true celebration of our magnificence, undefined. We're recreating food forests and kingdoms and kingdomains, no G in it, where the goodness of our heart, where everyone dreams for this. There's no one hears this, is not dreaming for this. It's in everyone. It's built in to show we don't need money, because that needs slavery, and that needs compromised man who dreams for mediocrity. So we raise mediocrity up as money, as the power, and call it magnificence, and we use the commercial power of money to create everything of the system. But none of this exists, because the only thing that exists is man and man's labor in performing the rituals of those definitions that has a man carry out the fantasy of money and commerce and stock market and civilization and construction and development and so on, all that shit. It's fucking robots. Gone. In spite of their good heart. That's the point. Having a good heart is not enough. Knowing the truth is not enough. Are you prepared to walk the talk and live it? Are you going to do it? And where are we going to do it? Because we have to make it happen. Now, this is not a call to action for war. We have no interest in it because we carry no weapons. We're non-violent. We do everything with full disclosure to everyone else out there. We're just saying, why do you want to live like this? Why do you want to live in misery and disguise it as joy and happiness watching television and days of our lives on TV? And going to the chemist and feeding yourself big pharmaceutical drugs. And then going to retirement homes because the fraction of you as the elderly with the children is so far broken. But you've got to think for yourselves, then whatever remains, you pass on the inheritance of fictional dollars to pass on this mediocrity to your children, who are going to take it even further into mediocrity. That's all they can do, because that's all they know. So it wouldn't matter how many kids you got out there who dream to do good things. They can only fuck it because they don't know who they are, because the definitions has blinded them, because their head is spinning with everything defined. Everything's defined. All you know is the alphabets in your head spinning. But you are not there because you never created those dreams. Who you are is ignored, pushed away. Your soul, that unique original dream, was never allowed to happen. It was pushed so far away that any residue of it now, for anyone in the system, is as far away as looking across the horizon of the ocean. And that tiny little spot of that little bit of light of the sun setting is all that's left. And if that goes into the night, and you truly do forget who you are, you've committed spiritual suicide. You've given it up. And nothing will carry on for you ever again. So this is not a movement under the name of Love for Life or under the name Arthur Cristian. This is not a movement to follow a man. This is the inspiration of a man's heart, and make it shine like the sun in radiance and not be in fear to shut those rays down, which is what we do in the system. We teach our children, turn all, excuse me, turn all the rays of our good heart back on self, to the definitions of self and what's in it for me. What's in it for me? What I own, what's mine? Because that's all you got in the system. That's what's been defined to you. And so where there once this magnificent sun is now a black hole, void of no light, no life. It's dead. And this is what we're doing to every child. And they don't know it because the fantasy, they believe they're magnificent, but it's a fucking fantasy. It's in mediocrity. They love the system. They're magnificent with their iPods and their computers and the internet and their rock bands and the television and the fast foods and all this stuff. There's very few truly waking up to the real big picture. So I don't want anyone to follow me, this man, but I'd love to co-create with others who want to hold a magnificent dream and create a living example of a kingdom, undefined, where man can be responsible for their magnificence and never be answerable to another man. That we don't need government. We don't need their law. We don't need their religions and their priests, because they're all in on this problem. I mean, look at the First World War and the Second World War. Who accumulated all the extra wealth? Church of England, the Jesuits, the Roman Catholic Church. All the denominations are spread out of it. And from that, the royal families and all the institutions that all connect in the private world. Great. Fantastic. All this material wealth in the system. How come we've got poverty everywhere? How things are getting so bad? How come even families like us who have never harmed anyone, never injured anyone, never committed a crime, haven't lied to anyone, and creating abundance in this little rental property and sharing it? And I'm prepared, unwilling, I should say, to give that up, but to expand it and break this thing down. See, all the money in the world will not fix this because it doesn't exist. All the definitions of knowledge will not fix this. All the intelligence out there, no matter who they are or what you are, will not fix it if you're lost in definitions. It will not fix it. It'll only make it worse. The truth is, we are supposed to be the magnificence of the living creator and passing that on as a legacy, an inheritance to those who come after us. That's all we're supposed to be doing. But we're not doing that. We're passing on fucking hell, horror, under the guise that I love you and I love you and we must have love. But they hop in their cars, they hop with electricity and gas, they hop in with the system and use their money in the contracts and all that. Bless their hearts. They don't know the bigger picture because they don't know how to hold a dream that's as big as their good heart. And you can't define that for someone, because people come with a good heart with a lost in a small brain which is all traumatized. It's the trauma that dominates. And they'll come after you and accuse you for their shit because they don't know how to take full responsibility. Their life is based on everyone else because that's what a slave does. A slave needs someone else to provide them with the water. The slave needs someone else to provide the food on the table for them to eat. The slave must go to the shop to get the food from crap that's been chemicalized by others who don't even hold them in their dreams. The slave is always out there looking for other slaves to give what the slave needs. And this even happens in your sleep. And wherever you rest your head. None of this is going to fix it. You can't go to an educated slave and get them to give you freedom. It won't happen. So if everyone around you is lost like that, you're in hell, in spite of your good heart and what you feel. And the deception of this New World Order is to deceive anyone, to bring us all close back to this magnificence, but still under the control of the government of these people, because everything will be broken down into sectors like manorialism. You know, the old days when serfs and commoners had to go to landlords and land barons, etc., priesthoods, and say, please, can you give us a piece of your land so I can build a home on it and grow food and take care of my family? And the landlord says, sure, but I want 50% of everything you do. I want 70%, or I might want your children, or I might even want your wife to produce me a child. Or I want you to paint my castle and clean it. Or I want you to go to war for me. Right, it's quota. And the New World Order is this quota system. It'll be cashless. But everyone will still be answerable because they don't hold a magnificent dream because it was all defined to them. You can't fake this and think it's the truth, because a fantasy will never be reality. So you're going to have a world of men and women after the huge culling, because there will be all kinds of sickness and disease and chaos that we've all created. We create the weather. We create everything. We're the only one to the experience creating everything. We're all at the effect of each other and the dreams that we hold of mediocrity mostly. So what I'm getting at here is that if you want to break away from this, you cannot default to the system and rely on the system to fix this, because you only bring the system into whatever you're holding as a dream to corrupt that too. And then you'll pass that corruption on to your children. And everyone's still blind spots everywhere to it, and they can't see it. The point is that no man's supposed to be a master of another man. No one's supposed to be answering another man, because the magnificence of your good heart, that is the big dream you created of your magnificent dream of life, that thought in your head, right, is filled with the living creator. And if you are conscious like that, brought up by nature like that, you would never want to covet another man for anything. You'd never want to look over the fence at another man, because you wouldn't even know what that was to do that. You're so fulfilled in every moment by this magnificence that you've been brought up in. Going off with bears and lions and tigers and climbing trees and all kinds of extraordinary things that we do. We see it today with amazing parquet and other things that we do. But that's just, it's in the mediocrity of the system. That we're all looking through the cage of the zoo of all these amazing MMA fighters. And all these people do parquet and all these amazing shows where people do amazing feats. But it's no different than going to a fucking circus and watching circus animals. Bless their hearts. They don't mean to. They're doing the right thing the best they can. So I'm not degrading them. But that's the truth. When you step back, because nothing's changed. You're still answerable to some slave masters out there. So they're going to bring you all very close back to this magnificent lie and pull it off as if it is a magnificent truth when it's not. A real man does not need another man to be a man. Who you are is already enough. Really are, that is. So we've written to the agents and told them these things. We also posted in the Facebook wall, if you go and look down the wall and go and look at some of the garden videos inside down the bottom after number 11, I think 12, you'll see a link to a sanitized version of the letter we wrote to the agents back in December last year, when they wrote to us in November complaining about the front of the garden and the fixtures of what's around this garden, right? And then we got dead silence after we sent them that letter, until this man organized to take down these Lalandi trees. And the agent said, the owner doesn't want those trees taken down. I said, well, it's destroying the fence lines. It's doing harm to it's going to wreck the fence. It's, and we were responsible to make sure of that. The Lalandi trees were bringing huge amounts of shadow, especially the house next door. They were probably 70%, 80% in shadow. And I can see their bedroom lights and bathroom lights on from 11, 12 o'clock all for the rest of the afternoon anyway, because there's no natural light. It's more of a darker shadow. Unless it's a very bright day, then they may not have it on, unless they're at work or whatever. But you see these lights on. And in the photos you'll see of where all this work, we put up the new lattice. You can see how the trunks have gone under the fence and started to lift up the fence and pulling it out. I'm not going to live like that. I mean, the first 7 years we had none of these here. We had no privacy. And they're complaining about privacy. But we never had privacy. So it wasn't a problem, and we didn't have for the first 6, 7 years. And we're the ones who watered them and did all this work. So this is not a victim. We're just saying it's a bit of hypocrisy that you're going to use that as the reason when I put something even much better than those trees, and we're going to put much better trees. They're going to be much more beautiful and create a much more beautiful garden, leaving something much more magnificent here than the mediocrity that we were gifted with when we moved here in desperation under the traumas of Macquarie Bank and all the stuff we were going through back then. So Fiona's got that termination notice to vacate 6th of November, basically 3 months. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the manpower and the resources to do it. We don't know where to even go to do it. And we're not going to live in desperation, because it must come from the good hearts. The dream that was created must come from the good hearts of brothers and sisters who want to live this dream. So if they want to pour in millions of dollars or not, it's up to them. We can't. But it shows that if we don't have brothers and sisters amongst us who are prepared to sacrifice everything for a dream like this, then we are gone. We're truly gone. And the calamity that's going to face us is enormous. So you can say that this man is like a harbinger of doom to come, if you wish, but I'm not. I come to show a way out of this. But I don't come to be anything better. I'm just a man like everyone else, and a man who suffers and coughs, and the body's still very traumatized. And in fact, I let the trauma of this body, since David Bottler came into this man's life, 2014, I let this body completely go back into that trauma, because I wanted to connect into the trauma. So it was a real experience through the body, and cope with it and know what is going on. So I could hear their voices through the trauma of this body, this obese body. I don't dream to be obese. I allowed it to be obese. It allowed all that childhood trauma and all that horror and connecting, because it's like, look at it like fish in an ocean. God that created the dream, imagine God created a dream of life, is a fish swimming in the ocean of its own creation, who creates progeny, who are swimming in the ocean of God's consciousness, because that's all they know. But it's magnificent. But now we've been given another ocean, another dream that is not magnificent, it's mediocrity. And we are now entered as the fish swimming in this ocean of mediocrity that's all based on fantasy and doing harm. And we're breathing it and living it, and that's all we know. And we've been told, just like, again, another way I use it's like a sandpit. And every grain of sand in this sandpit is a defined thought. And there's some tools like sand buckets and trowels and shovels and rakes and all the other thrown in there. And we produce children, and we drop in the sandpit and say, son, daughter, this is what you've got to create your life. Play with this world we're giving you. Build your life out of it. But there's nothing in there that's unique to them. It was all given to them. So they've only been offered a choice. They've not been given freedom. That's no different to you going to the shops and all the slaves that go over in the system, relying on slave systems. You have to go and pick what you want from slavery. There's no freedom in this. It's just choice. Oh, and that choice is defined by others. You can only have what they're going to give you. You can only get what you're going to get. You're going to pay what we ask of you. You want to keep living in a world like that? Well, you're going to see the end result of this very soon. All the good hearts in the world in celebration will not stop the calamity of what's about to come. It really is going to be that bad. And we've done it because we still allowed the lie to dominate. That mediocrity is still being sung as magnificence when it ain't at all. It's just one big fucking lie. The sacrifice to let go of the system and to co-create the living paradise comes from the true intention, because the spirit of man is intention. Everything, when you see the word spirit in the Bible, it's intention. The intention to create the outcome of the dreams that we hold. And that is the shooting star that comes to life in the womb that you see in the night sky. It's a soul coming from the family, the tribe, into a life that was called forth, or called its soul forth. And then you see others. It's only man's creation. Get past the science fiction, get past galaxies and quantum physics and universes. All this is crap, guys. It's just creation. Man's living dream of life. Do you really, truly cherish it and the sacredness of it and restoring it with your good heart and not let this lie affect it? If you do, work with this man, because I can help you with this. I can see it clearly and help you. Not as your leader, not as your master, but someone who can school you, if you want to use this fucking awful system words, where the lie is and how it's deceiving you. Because you can tell by the presence, the energy, if it's coming from self-obsession. And I should wind this up by saying that The pixelations of all definitions is the illusion, the fantasy of the dream of life of a fake self that we are holding up as this, what we call magnificent dream. We can call it whatever you want. Everyone's got a name in the system. This is not who we are. And all the definitions that collectively forms this dreamscape of the matrix is hell itself. It is truly hell. And it wouldn't matter how much you want to do gardening or how much you want to work with nature. If you cannot fix this and get that dream back, which only you can do through undefined means, which means we've got to create the environment for this undefined experience to come into a man's vessel, because the system won't let you do that. The microwaves, the radio waves, the chemtrails, the HARP, the broadcasting, the advertising, the commercial, the demands on pieces of paper, the clock ticking, and all the obligations that pull at you, including all the things that lead you to having sex and wanking over pornography and getting caught up in cults and gender, and all these things going to keep your head spinning with this stuff is what's going to keep it, your good heart, apart from holding a magnificent dream. You have to let it all go. Give up race, culture, creed, gender. Give up everything that's defined. And if you don't know how to do it, then you need others to help you with it. And don't be ashamed to think that you're less than someone else by being with others who can help you with it. If you truly want to hold a magnificent dream, we'll nurture that. But if you sell out to it, it becomes obvious and stands out. And if you truly want the system and all its lie, then you won't survive. When I say survive, you will pull yourself away from dreams like this. So we're not asking because we're desperate. We have no desperation, no emotion attached to any of this. It's simply all around us. Do you want to raise magnificent up around so we don't live like this anymore? Or do you all just going to keep clinging to the system, keep waking up and going to bed to the clock of the system with all this bullshit, where nothing's really changed, where everyone's still waiting for something to happen? And that something to happen is what the Freemasons and the occultists have got in control of. But your good heart and expanding that, they have no control of that and never will. But you got to know what that is. You got to know who you are. And that is through your senses. It's not through alphabet thoughts in your head, defining what you are sensing. So that's really it. Contact us through Facebook if you wish. Pass this video on because censorship is massive. We're ghosted. The way that the sophisticated software is used, nothing much gets out. These insights this man shares is the supreme of all supreme. You cannot get anything as good as this anywhere. But the only other one that I even know is probably Raymond Kozowski, and Raymond's on a different tack, and I support him in that. But what we're talking about, what we're doing, is the way we're doing it, not to claim exclusivity and privilege. We're looking at the bigger picture of kingdom itself that's undefined. And again, go to that image label, Fred, and explore it. If we are to progress, it's going to come from the hearts of brothers and sisters around us who truly live this dream. If they don't, then we are going to see calamity beyond our comprehension. Absolute calamity, because we are not individuals. The conscience of the Creator speaks through this man. It speaks through Raymond Kozowski, and it speaks through some of us. There's others out there who really know, can see the difference.
You want to build yourself a castle, a better castle than the other ones. You come out, the spades and shovels and the buckets are all lined up ready for you to money, I want fortune, skills and outcomes. You're scaling empty mountains, faking footsteps, faking handholds. You big man giant, you're driving truckloads of emotion, compelling you to dance to sandpit tunes. Rulers bending you to orders, binding you with whispers, teaching you to dream their dreaming, kindly porting up the fences, handing out the slave toys, or you know to rule the world with. You're grabbing toys to make a hit, you're trading smiles with avarice, you're thinking that you worked it out. You're blind to those who guide your way, your rosy glasses hold this way, your sandpit thinking pulls you down. All your might and all your armies, with all your 666 hand signals, and your second twisted rituals of death, giant. And you think you got the answers, but all you got is dead delusion. You're just stuck inside this no return vortex, giant. You're the chosen ones of nothing, you're the golden goose of folly. All the power you claim just doesn't exist, giant. You big man giant, you're toweling giant. You big man giant, you're just a clown. You big man giant, you're toweling giant. You big man giant, you're just a clown. The bird has flown up to